spiritually and emotionally healthy families in our ummah. Alhamdulillah, may Allah reward her and help her for that. And she, mashallah, she has a high, she is trained to become a high performance coach. She's certified to be a high performance coach, certified back to the Fitra educator, mentor, coach, and practitioner of the inside out paradigm. Sister Rayesa, we are very happy to have you here tonight, inshallah. And please, without any further ado, we give you, oh, what happened?
It's okay.
Yes, we give you the floor, inshallah, to start and give us a presentation. Aisha, it's going to be 9:50, so we have about 45 minutes. So, inshallah, take your time. And whenever you need anything from me here, I am around, but I am secondary. So, Sister, inshallah, will be our guide tonight, inshallah, through this self-awareness, self-development journey. Jazakallah khair. Please.
Okay, thank you. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuhu. Rabbi shrah li sadri wa yassir li amri wa hlul uqdatan min lisani yafqahu qawli. Allahumma salli ala Sayyidina Muhammad wa ala ali Sayyidina Muhammad. Allahumma barik ala Muhammad wa ala ali Muhammad. So this is what we're talking about today, self-awareness and self-development. So who can tell me what self-awareness is? What does it mean to you? Anybody can just say it.
Come on, guys.
Yeah, go ahead. What is it?
Knowing the self-value.
Knowing your self-value, okay. Knowing your weaknesses and strengths, yes.
Knowing who we are and what we want.
Knowing who you are and what you want and where you're going. Yeah. Knowing your what? You're knowing your impact, okay. Anyone else?
Knowing your weaknesses.
Knowing your weaknesses. Okay. All right. So the definition from the dictionary tells us that awareness is knowledge or perception of a situation, right? Like you hear, we need to raise awareness about something. Synonyms of what awareness means is consciousness, realization or perception or understanding. What else? Okay, insight. And the opposite, oops, I'm not that familiar with it, okay, is ignorance. And for me, what I think of when I think of awareness is, am I awake? Right? Because we do so many things on autopilot, like brushing our teeth or driving, taking our kids to school. Like, are we really paying attention to what we're doing, or is our mind filled with so many other things while we're doing whatever activity that we're doing? So for me, I like to look at it as, am I awake? And the opposite of that would be, I'm asleep. And why are we talking about this, right? Because we want to wake up, right? Well, we don't want to wake up with the catastrophe. We are being given an opportunity to be awake right now, because a lot of times, sometimes it takes something catastrophic to happen in our life in order to wake us up. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells us in Surah Al-Hadid that know that the life of this world is but amusement and diversion and adornment and boasting to one another, and competition and increase of wealth and children. Like this example of rain whose plant growth pleases the tillers, then it dries and you see it turn yellow. Then it becomes scattered debris. So this is such clear imagery for us that, do we understand this? Do we realize this? Remember that definition, that synonym for awareness of realization? Do we realize that this is the world that we're living in, day out? And just like something looks so lush and beautiful and amazing, the next moment it could be gone, right? There's nothing that's guaranteed. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala just gives us that imagery, and in the hereafter is severe punishment and forgiveness from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and approval. So it gives us an opportunity to really be conscious of how we're living this life that we have on earth, right? Moment by moment, are we aware of our intention, of what we're doing, of every action, every decision, every choice, every behavior? So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala continues to go on and says, and what is the worldly life except the enjoyment of delusion? When we think we have enough time, when we think that everything is, fine, and everything is fine, we hear this four-letter word all the time. I'm fine, everything's okay. But as Muslims, we don't want to be just fine, right? We want to be top of the level. We don't want to just accept mediocrity. We want to live with ihsan. We want to be the best that we can be. So this is just a reminder for all of us. And why are we talking about self-awareness, right? And I was reflecting on this, and I was thinking, well, this is how I started thinking about self-awareness for myself, because there was a point where I was just reacting all throughout my life, and I never realized why I was doing what I was doing. And at one point, I had to ask myself, well, one day I'm going to have to stand in front of Allah, and how am I going to answer for these things? There's no escape for that. So accounting for yourself, taking responsibility for yourself, before we have to take accountability with Allah, right? And part of our purpose, we all know as Muslims, that it's to worship Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. We're here for that, right? And part of worship is knowing Allah. And in order to know Allah, we need to know ourselves, right? Because the one who knows Allah knows himself, and there is no way we can know ourselves without knowing Allah, because he's the one who created us. And this reminds me of the hadith to take account of 5 before 5. Your youth, your health, your wealth, your free time, right? And last but not least, this hadith tells us, take account of your life before your death. So can we really feel like all of the choices that we make, like we can stand in front of Allah and say, like, I did my best, and with everything that you gave me, I reached my potential. I didn't leave anything on the table, and or are we going to be with regrets on our last days or on our deathbeds that we didn't do this, or we didn't spend enough time with our kids, or we treated this person this way, right? We don't want to go through life with regrets. So I wanted us to talk a little bit about conscious awareness. And it starts off with self-awareness, right? Because self-awareness of your thoughts, your body, your presence, it leads way to self-consciousness, right? We talked about that earlier. Awareness and consciousness are like synonyms. And when you are aware of yourself and you're conscious of yourself, then you can be conscious of Allah. You can have God consciousness, which is taqwa, right? And we just spent a few months ago cultivating that in the whole month of Ramadan, and trying to up-level that for ourselves during the month of Ramadan. And why is that so important? Is because in order to have tawakkul. And we hear about tawakkul all the time, and we're told have tawakkul, it's in the Quran, and we hear it all the time, to have tawakkul, that's the solution, right? But knowing that and understanding what that really means are two different things. Because if we're not aware of Allah, if we're not even aware of ourselves, how can we be aware of Allah? And then if we're not aware of Allah, how could we rely on Allah throughout our life in order to successfully navigate the tests and the trials of this life? So you can just raise your hand, let me know if you can relate to any of these. Being disconnected from yourself, from Allah, from others, feeling overwhelmed and lost in your roles, stressed out, anxious, unfulfilled, burned out, resentful, fearful, angry, frustrated. Your heart may be closed off from pain, confused, and want to know what the right choices are. Can anybody relate to this? pretty human, right? I mean, these are all human emotions that human beings feel. It's very normal. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala created us to feel this whole array of emotions, of feelings, right? This is very normal. However, what do we do with this? What do we do with our feelings, our emotions, right? Because a lot of times when we're in our feelings, it feels so real and it feels like the truth. And sometimes we don't realize it until after the fact, when we're in our feelings, such as these or any feelings, and we instead of responding, we react. We usually always end up regretting it. Can anybody relate to that? I know I definitely can. There's been many times where I've regretted when I responded out of anger or frustration or resentment. So the reason I'm bringing this up is we're not here to suppress our feelings or be upset about our feelings or get frustrated that we're having feelings, because we're thinking, feeling beings, right? But how do we handle this? How do we deal with it? So one of the things I wanted to share with you is about understanding our human experience. For example, how are we understanding or how are you perceiving what's happening in your life? Moment by moment. Your circumstances, your situation, your relationships, whatever happens to you, how are you relating to it, right? And a lot of times people they like to relate this to our psychology. So most of the world believes that your feelings of anger, frustration, upset, whatever it is coming from the outside world. Your spouse said something, your child is not behaving, you lost your job. So all of these things cause us to feel frustrated, upset, or angry, or whatever the feeling is. However, that's not how it works. Because circumstances and situations, they change, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala knows what circumstances, situations, tests that He's putting us in. He knows what spouse He's given us. He knows what children He's given us. He knows what tests and challenges He's brought our way. And it's not about the situation, but it's about how we respond to it. So in order to respond to it in a way that can benefit us and be pleasing to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, we have to understand and take responsibility for how we're feeling. So our feelings are always coming from our thinking in the moment. All the time, nowhere else. So if I am frustrated that my child is not making her bed, it's not coming from the fact that she's not making her bed, it's coming from my thinking about that action, about her not making my bed. And this is, it may seem really foreign because, like I said, most of the world operates like, oh, my child doesn't do this, my husband doesn't do that, and I'm so stressed out, and I'm so frustrated. It's not about people doing things. It's about how you're perceiving it, how you're thinking about it. What are the thoughts that are going on? And I know, like with children, a lot of times we're like, oh, this child is never going to learn. This child is going to be a lazy bum. They have, we start going into the future and having outcome thinking of everything that's going to go wrong because they're not making their bed. So we get frustrated and we feel like we need them to do the thing that we think we need them to do so we can feel better. So feelings, like I said, always coming from your thinking in the moment about your circumstance, about your situation, about a person. It's not coming from the person, the situation, or the circumstance. And that's why we're always living in the feeling of our thinking in the moment. All the time, moment by moment by moment, because the reality is nothing else exists except the present moment, right? The past is never coming back. It's done. It's over. And we can never go back to it. It's done, finished. And the future doesn't exist. So the only place that life exists is in the present moment. But how many times are we not in the present moment? How many times are we ruminating about the past and thinking, oh, I should have done this, or I should have done that, why didn't I do this? If I did this, this would have happened. All of this thinking is kind of just destroys our mental well-being because there's nothing we can do about it. And going over and over in the past, or being fearful about the future, It's not helpful and is not what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala asks us to do either, because He's the only one who knows about the future, right? So it's not for us to try to figure it out, to try to, make a plan and make sure this doesn't happen or that doesn't happen. That's not our job. That's Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's job. He's in charge of the outcomes. We're in charge of our intention and our effort. So, like I said, the circumstance or the situation or the person that you're dealing with cannot cause your feelings. So, it's not possible for someone to say, for you to say, you made me angry. That's why I did this. It's your fault, right? Because your feelings are coming from inside of you. It's your responsibility to take ownership of your feelings, because otherwise we can justify any behavior we want and say, well, you made me do it. It's your fault. It's because you did this, and it's because, you did this, I got angry, and this is the results. We can't stand in front of Allah and say, oh, well, she made me do this, and she did that to me, because it's not about that. It's about between you and Allah, right? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will say, well, I'm dealing with you now. I'm talking to you. Who's responsible for your behavior and your actions, right? This is where this is really powerful, because when we understand that how we feel comes from inside of us, not from outside. So we can take ownership of that, and then we can choose to either act on our feelings, or we can pause and get our bearings, because, when we're in the heat of the moment, in big feelings, we can't think clearly. Our brain shuts off. We don't have the capacity to think or to be in our wisdom to know, what's the best way to proceed forward in this situation, right? So if we don't know the best thing to do, one of my mentors says is to zip your lips and put your hands in your pockets and just pause, wait until you get that. See, because when we're in our feelings, we're disconnected from ourselves. And that means we're also disconnected from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in that moment. So without Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's wisdom or guidance, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is always guiding us. And we ask for that guidance over 17 times a day, right? So the guidance is there. Sometimes we just can't hear it because this is just overthinking. So understanding where your feelings are coming from and where they're not coming from is very, very powerful, because then you take responsibility for your feelings, your actions, and your behaviors. And, you don't have to wait for someone else for things to change, right? A lot of times I hear this, oh, well, he never changes. I'm waiting for him to change. Or she never changes. When she changes, then I'll change. And we all know that doesn't work that way, right? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is not going to change anything for us. We have to change first. We have to see where do we need change. And we'll know, between us and Allah, we'll know where we need to change. And once we start making those changes, then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will make the appropriate changes for us. So I mentioned, so, like I mentioned, our feelings are coming from inside of us. This is why this understanding is called the inside-out paradigm. Your well-being and your internal state is coming from inside. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala created us on the fitrah, whole and healthy. And we just have gotten disconnected from that fitrah. And so the well-being is already there. The connection is already there. The confidence, the resilience, the taqwa and tawakkul is already there within us. We don't have to do anything to get it. We just have to come back and reconnect to it. And, through life and experiences, we've just gotten disconnected and farther away from that. So I mentioned taqwa and tawakkul earlier before, but how I like to look at things is this is like formula for success. And this is from the chapter on divorce, Surah Talaq, verse 2 and 3. And I know that everyone's heard this. It's so common, right? We hear this all the time. And what I like to really pick out and really hold on to help in every single situation in my life, are these two concepts here. Taqwa and tawakkul. Whoever is mindful of Allah, that's right, conscious of Allah, aware of Allah every moment in your thoughts. Is Allah there with you? Or like, are you just like running around, I have to do this, I have to do that, I need to do this, and this needs to happen? Or it's like, okay, what do I need to do? Let me do that. Let me do what I need to do. Let me try my best, and I know Allah will take care of the rest. I know Allah's got it. He's going to give me the best outcome, right? Like, do I have that level of taqwa that I need? And am I trusting in the outcome? Whatever the outcome is, am I detached from the outcome? Not the plan or the outcome that I want or I desire, because we're very limited in our thinking and our understanding. We don't even know what we need sometimes. We don't even know what's best for us, right? Do we have that level of trust and faith that we can put our best foot forward and do the right thing based on how Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is guiding us in the moment, and then let go of the outcome, detach from the outcome? And this is really the formula for success, and it's, subhanAllah, what a wisdom of putting it in the chapter on divorce, because there's a lot of conflict a lot of times that come through, when there's a breakup, and people separate, there's hurt, there's misunderstandings, and in those feelings, we may not behave or interact in the way that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells us to when we divorce, right? So this taqwa and tawakkul is so important in terms of not just challenges, hardships, or tests, but everything that you want to do in life, right? You want to start a business. That's right. You want to start a business, right? And it's unknown. You don't know how it's going to turn out. You have a vision, you have a mission, you have something that you want to share with the community, you want to be of service, but you don't know how it's going to turn out. And we don't need to know. That's the thing. We think we need to know. We don't need to know. We only need to know whatever Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gives us, right? We're on a need-to-know basis. So how can we move forward? We have to move forward with taqwa and tawakkul in any endeavor that we do. So the way I like to look at it is, as we just mentioned, the formula for success is taqwa and tawakkul, right? So as I mentioned, self-awareness is on one side, right? And self-consciousness is on the other side. And in between is taqwa, right? Because if you are aware of yourself, you'll be conscious of yourself. Then you will be conscious of Allah, and then you will be able to have trust and rely on Allah in the way that you need to in order to be successful for this life and the next. Because without taqwa, how are you going to rely on Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? You won't even be aware or conscious of it. And when we have, awareness comes at different levels, right? Because maybe at this time of your life, you may have a little bit more awareness than things that you didn't have awareness, maybe when you were younger, right? And awareness happens at different levels, and it's not about age, it's about consciousness. Because when you're operating at a higher level of consciousness, your thinking will be very different. You'll have higher level thinking. You'll be more in your wisdom. Rather than just relying on your intellect, you will be able to trust yourself and your intuition and hear the internal guidance that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is guiding you with. You'll be able to, when we're not operating at a higher level of consciousness, we're in our feelings, right? So we call that a lower level of consciousness, and we'll have lower level of thinking. We'll have fear, we'll have insecurity, we'll have anger, we'll have frustration, and that's the lens that we'll start seeing everything through. So then we will approach people and situations in that way. And when we're in the lower level thinking and we can recognize it, then we know, okay, I better pause. This is not the time to proceed. This is not the time to talk to my daughter about this important thing right now, because she won't hear me, because I'm upset with her and she's upset with me. So we need connection first before any type of correction, right? Because you can talk, but if you're trying to communicate and a person can't hear you because there's just, everyone's in heightened state of feelings, you're just going to have two egos clashing like this. So the way I like to break down taqwa is two ways. In order to have taqwa, you have to be in your purpose, right? And we talked about our purpose is to worship Allah, and it's based on intention. We know every action is based on intention, right? Intention and effort. That means that is what you're going to do, whether you're driving your kids to school, or whether you're going to work, or whether you're cleaning your house, or whether you're going and getting groceries, whatever it is you're doing. In order for that to be an act of worship, you have to make that intention and know, okay, I'm doing this for the pleasure of Allah. I'm doing this for you, Ya Allah. And I'm doing it in a way that's pleasing to you. Not like huffing and puffing, like, fine, I'll do this, okay, here, take it. Like, we can also do that as well, but when we're aware of how we're doing it, that falls into being aware of taqwa. And our position is state of mind, right? That means that are you in your innate fitra state of peace, of calm? Are you present in the moment? Or is your mind scattered thinking about all the things that need to be done later on today, and you just lost what's happening right now? You're not here, you're somewhere else, right? So are you aware of your thoughts and your feelings? Are you responsible for them? Are you owning them, right? And this is how you stay in this state of calm, is by being aware. So I was looking at how our faith teaches us about tawakkul, right? And we hear this word all the time. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells us in chapter 5, verse 23, and put your trust in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala if you are believers indeed, right? And we all say that we're believers, right? But saying and, let's see. You got it. Saying and that I'm a believer, right? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells us, you say you believe, but you will be tested. And how is that being tested, right? How can we demonstrate to Allah that we believe and we trust in Him, right? It's our actions. Our actions are going to demonstrate that. And if we're feeling, let's say, fearful, that means we're having fearful thinking underneath. I also hear tawakkul being described as fear of Allah. And I also hear it as reliance on Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And I like to look at it as, we know that faith is a balance of fear of disappointing Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and hope in His mercy, right? And so I like to look at it as a reliance. Who am I relying on? Who am I trusting in, right? Am I attached and reliant on this job and this paycheck? Or do I know that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the one who gives me my paycheck, right? Can I differentiate the difference between the means and the source, and which is the one that I rely on? And these are tests that we face, and Allah, it's a test because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is seeing, are you attached to me? Are you attached to the job or the paycheck? Because the provision and the provider is one, is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So I like to look at it in terms of reliance on Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And how we like to break down tawakkul is two ways. Like your presence, are you mentally in the present moment, right? Because like I said, if you're not in the present moment, you're disconnected to yourself and you're also disconnected to Allah in those moments. So you don't have access to your wisdom. You don't have access to the guidance that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is always sending us, right? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells us that He's closer to us than our jugular vein. He's always there. But it's us, the ones that get disconnected, that move away. And your peace, right? We know that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells us that peace comes from the remembrance of Allah, right? So that means, are you aware of Him? Are you conscious of Him? Is He there with you at every moment in how you're talking to somebody, and how you're coming to the masjid and what you leave behind at the masjid? Are you connected to yourself and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in the present moment, or are you in the past? Are you thinking about everything that happened and you're living there like it still exists, right? And that's how we hurt ourselves, innocently, ignorantly. Innocently, we don't realize, okay, I'm living in the past. This is why I'm so sad and upset, because naturally so, because we can't do anything about it. It's done, right? And going there over and over and over again and trying to wish and, oh, I wish I didn't do this and I wish I didn't do that, instead of accepting the qadr of Allah, things happen the way they were meant to happen. Qadr of Allah, let's keep going forward. Okay, what is Allah looking for me? And now at this point, where am I right now, right? Or in the future, it's like when we think that, you know, somebody's being unfair to us and they've always been unfair, then we paint them in that light. And every time we approach them, whether it's in a marriage or whether it's in any relationship, we have this lens, we look at them like, oh, they're always going to be like this. Every time they treat me like this. So you approach the person with a barrier. So, and with barriers, we can't connect to each other. We need connection as human beings. We need connection to ourselves, we need connection to Allah, and we need to connect with each other in order to experience the relationships that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given us. So I wanted to talk a little bit about, we talked a lot about feelings, right? And we did say that our feelings are always coming from our thinking in the moment. So when, and you know what, it feels so real. Like when you're fearing that, oh my God, my child's gonna lose his deen. You know, like my child is exposed to all of these things. Like this is, it feels so real, right? But we don't know what's gonna happen in the future. We don't. And I'll give you a great example. We talk about, and then we start being, well, see, when we are fearful, when we're feeling fear, it feels like it's gonna happen. It feels really real. It's because we're having fearful thinking. And what is fearful thinking? It just means that you're having insecure thinking. You're insecure at that moment. Why? Because we're talking about the future. And none of us have access to the future, only Allah. So what's the solution? The solution is to connect back to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, because He's the one who has the access to the future, right? And the unknown. And then so what we start doing when we have insecure thinking, we start to control. I have to get her to do this, I have to get her to do this, I have to limit this and I have to limit that, and we stifle the person, or we like my daughter says, maybe micromanage the person, right? And we don't allow them to grow in a healthy way with connection and with curiosity. Yes, we need to protect our children too, but we can't protect them from the world. That's the reality. We have to teach them how to live in this world. And for that, they need to have trust in us, and that gets built through connection. So what ends up happening is if we buy into the fears, we end up creating a self-fulfilled prophecy, because that pushes the person away from us, and that's the last thing that we want, because we want to be able to guide, like for example, our children. And you know, the example I was telling you about, let me finish talking about intuition. Maybe some of you have heard what this is, what intuition means, and I like to describe it as your wisdom. Because your intuition is something that you can't prove or explain. It's a knowing that's deep down in your gut or your heart, and it's how Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala guides us, right? Because when you know that something is right, and you can't like prove it, but you have that clarity, and you have that confidence and the conviction, no, this is the right step for me. It's, you know, you're not falling into fear or what ifs, or anything like that. You'll have that level of clarity, and this is the guidance that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala sends each one of us. Like we all have access to this, but what is the barrier to this is our own thinking. Fearful, insecure thinking, frustrated, because it creates a fog and it creates mental weight in our mind that we can't hear the guidance that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is sending us. Like, what's the right step? What's the right decision for me in this situation, right? And we fall into like, okay, let me ask this person, what should I do? Let me ask that person, they're the expert. Well, let me tell you that you're the expert in your life. You are, not me or anybody else. And you need to know what to do by looking internally and asking Allah. Because at the end of the day, whatever you do, you're gonna have to account for it, right? Because somebody can tell you, oh, you should do this, you should do that. But they're coming from their own perception and their own opinions and their own thinking, from their own experience for their life. Because Allah will guide you for what you need for your life, right? And this is how we develop that relationship with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So we also know this, we also call this as divine thinking, right? And this is where all of your answers will come from. And the example that I wanted to share was about, when I got divorced about 9 years ago, had a very high conflict divorce. And I have 3 children, and at that time, my 2 older boys were, I think, 13 and 11, or 12 and 14, something like that. And they were going to go and live with their father. And, their whole life, I was so used to like raising them, and we were very close. And they, with having to go and live with their father, they had to basically cut off all relationships with me. And that was, of course, that required me to have a higher level of tawakkul. That required me to have a higher level of taqwa. And what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala was teaching me was detachment. Detachment from my children, that they don't belong to me, that wherever they go, Allah's got them and Allah's taking care of them. And I had a lot of fearful thinking. I didn't know what to do, but turning to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and my mentor once told me, she's like, okay, you're going to have to increase your spiritual connection with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala at this point in order to go through this test. And I remember with my oldest one, there was a lot of tension within me. I knew deep down what the right thing was to do. The right thing was to do to let him go. But my thinking, fearful thinking, insecure thinking, ego thinking, like, oh, what's going to happen to him? He needs me. And all of these things were getting in the way of me allowing myself to release him. But nonetheless, I did, and I felt such relief doing the right thing, even though, my mind was telling me something else, but my heart was telling me something else. So listening to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's guidance and doing what I needed to do gave me such relief. And even the story of Prophet Musa's mother gave me such, such solace. And I got the relief. And then 2 years later, when my other son, it was so natural. It's like I knew what I needed to do. I knew what I needed to do. So it was a lot more easier to let him go. And I have a daughter too who's younger, and I don't know whether she's going to live with her dad or with me, and we live in different states. So it's allowed me to detach, not just from my children, but from people and from things. That I have an idea or a vision or what I would like, but I'm not attached to it. Meaning Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala usually has a different plan than we have for ourselves. He has a different plan for us than we usually have for ourselves. And it's learning how to, with this understanding, learning how to let go of that and to surrender, to submit to his plan. And there's so much benefit in that, so much growth and so much elevation for us. And this is what I really wanted to leave you with, right? Because self-awareness will really allow you to elevate yourself in this life, in terms of growth, in terms of patience, in terms of resilience, in terms of detachment, in terms of courage, all of these things. And in the next life, right? With higher levels of taqwa and tawakkul that your life experiences are going to require of you, you also get to elevate, inshallah ta'ala, in the eyes of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. One of my mentors describes it as when you're going to that painful, test, it's like you're being squeezed to the next level of Jannah. And we all want to be at the highest level of Jannah, don't we? Yes? Yes, okay. On the other hand, not having self-awareness can really destroy us. Because if we keep blaming someone else for our own feelings and our own actions, then we're stuck in this victim mentality. It's all because of them. Nothing changes because of them. Nothing changes because my circumstances are like this. I don't have this and I don't have that. So, I can't be successful and I can't follow my dreams, or I can't reach the potential Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has created me with because I don't have X, Y, and Z. Like always making excuses, always giving reasons why you can't, rather than looking for what you have and focusing on that and doing what you can, because it will destroy us. We'll be mentally unwell. We will, be living like a victim, always in a bad mood, blaming other people. Relationships will suffer. It's just not a good place to be in. And again, we don't want to find out when it's too late that we didn't know, we weren't aware, because we chose to distract ourselves and go with the phone or go with, at this day and age, there's so many things to distract yourself. You don't want to feel something. Remember, your feeling and your thinking go hand in hand. They're like two sides of the same coin. You don't want to feel something, just pick this up and distract yourself. Turn the TV on, distract yourself. You don't want to feel something, you don't want to think about it. It's very easy to escape that, but there is no escape. And we don't want to find out when it's too late, right? And alhamdulillah, like this has been so inspirational to me that anytime I want to see something in my life, I realize I have to look within first, because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is only going to give me at the level that I am. I can only receive at the level that I can give or that I have. So that means that whatever I want, however I want to experience life or I want to create or move forward with in any endeavor, like I have to create that for myself first, internally. And then it will come externally, inshallah. Jazakallah khair. And I know I did a lot of talking.
No, you're great, mashallah.
And I'd love to hear questions or
Yes.
takeaways.
We have a few minutes. I don't want to make any comment because, mashallah, Sister Rayesa has handled both. The psychological, emotional aspect as well as the religious aspect, mashallah. You said lots of things. So I don't want to be just using your time. So please, inshallah, if you notice something or you benefited something or it helped you to give a new concept, or share it with us. Or if you have a question, please do. Sisters, inshallah.
Yes.
I fully understand what you presented, but the main point is when you are getting towards Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and you have gone through this whole, data mental stress and mental disturbance, how would you focus yourself towards, for example, in Salah, you're so mentally disturbed, you're so much under stress and going through that trauma that you even don't focus with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. How can you bring yourself and be focused in that situation when you are mentally and going through that trauma? Trying to get attached to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, but you are getting distracted. You are not, there mentally. How you cope up with that situation?
Yeah, that's a great question. So it all goes back to awareness. When you say mentally stressed, mentally weighed down, that weight, that stress and that weight is not coming from the circumstance or the situation. It's coming from our thinking about it. We're constantly thinking about it, ruminating. What will happen if I do this and this will happen? Oh my God, what's going to happen here? What do I need to do here? It's the thinking, it's the thoughts that weigh us down. So being aware, like, when we start becoming aware and of this understanding that I shared with you today is very, very simple. Feelings are coming from thought in the moment 100% of the time. However, it's has very profound implications when you understand what this means. Because it's not just understanding it intellectually, it's understanding it and absorbing it in the heart level that, oh, okay, well, now I say this to myself, okay, I'm just not in my wisdom, I'm just having lots of thinking right now, let me go ground myself. And what does that mean? That means, what do I need to do to come back to the present moment, to reconnect back to myself and Allah? And it's not prescriptive. It's not like, okay, go do this, and you'll be back in the present moment connected to Allah, go do that. No, what is feeling right for you? Is it in the remembrance of Allah do hearts find rest? Is it dhikr? Is it, taking a walk and reflecting Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in nature? Is it, maybe looking at pictures and seeing like how much Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given you in your family? Shukr, being grateful. A lot of times, a lot of our angst will go away if we focus on what we have rather than what we don't have. And focus on where that Allah is with us all the time. We're never alone. We know this, we heard it many times, but do we believe it? Right? So just coming back to those truths. And it's a gradual process, right? It's not a turn off, turn on type of thing. And 1 minute, you have this high level of taqwa and tawakkul and you're so aware and you're so calm and your mind is at ease and peace. No, it's a gradual process. For me, myself, I've been learning this for 8 years. So it never ends. Our level of taqwa and tawakkul and consciousness, it never ends. Our relationship with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and ourselves, our connection with ourselves, it never ends until we end. I hope I answered your question.
Yeah, I have a comment on that one. I'll just take a minute. How many of us here look at the mirror in the morning? Raise your hand, come on, don't be scared. Not only sisters. Yani. Why do you feel a need that you look at yourself in the mirror in the morning? Making sure you look good. Like, or make sure that you do not look bad. That too, right? Okay, what do you do after you saw yourself in the mirror? Huh? You are going to take actions, right? But it takes you some time there before you take any action, whether it is doing wudu, washing your face, doing your makeup, touching your skin, whatever you decide to do, right? It came as a result of that one moment there between looking at the mirror and seeing and deciding what to do. That is awareness. That's exactly what it is, right? You need that mirror to be aware who you are and what you need to do. But the problem is we decide already and then we run and do what we do. So now back to answer that question, Sister Rayesa mentioned her own example, and I commend you for that, to have the courage to mention, mashallah, this. But you see, she talked about detachment. Back to your issue, when you have a calamity or something like that, you come to the salah. Because you submerged yourself into the problem, which is part of your life. So you come to salah, which is your life, distracted. That's basically the result. Why the Prophet ﷺ, whenever he had a problem, he finds salah is the escape. See, it's complete opposite mental state here. So the idea is you come to the salah distracted with all the problems because you did not identify. You are not self-aware of who you need to be while you are in salah. So if you go back again, you say that I am the slave of Allah, regardless of all the calamities, regardless of the job, of the divorce, of the children, of whoever, whatever happens. I am the slave of Allah, and salah is that identification. At that time, I am only connected without all of these distractions. Then salah will help you. But you come to the salah without identifying as the one who's supposed to be doing the salah. You are in the wrong place. You know, you are not who you're supposed to be. You did not enter from the right door. You are in the wrong spot now. You are actually in the right spot, but the wrong state of mind. So I hope this makes some sense.
You know, one of my teachers, I took this course called Transform My Prayer. And one of the teachings in there was, before you get on the prayer, when you get on the prayer mat, we're always rushing, right? Right? We don't know how to slow down. Is stop, pause, before you say Allahu Akbar. Just take a moment to know who you are and who you're standing in front of. And just absorb that, and then say Allahu Akbar, like I'm going into communication with Allah, I'm going into Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's presence. And yes, I need Him, I am struggling here, so I want to be with Him. I want to be with you, Allah. Right. And when you take that moment, sometimes I struggle to give that to myself as well, but really when you give yourself that moment to pause and think, okay, who am I and where am I going right now? What am I doing right now? In front of whom? And then say Allahu Akbar.
Like for example, we'll finish. You know, to comment on this one also, that after Salah, I myself, when I started like this self-awareness journey a while ago, this rushing mentality before Salah, how I fixed it by doing something after the Salah. So I extended the time I stay after my prayer. Normally I say, Assalamu alaikum, and I have million things in my head I have to go attend to. So actually my salah became very short, became very distracted because I'm always thinking what I'm going to do after, right? So now I know I'm relaxed. I need about 5 minutes after salah to just sit in my place. My salah itself quality changes. So that's so inshallah, I think, I hope one question only, then we have salah. Yes. Salam.
For both of you, you mentioned like as a physical reflection, you can see what's wrong with you or how to fix it in a mirror. What would be that same thing that you can do for your consciousness, for your awareness, like for your mental being?
It's called tafakkur and وَلْتَنْظُرْ نَفْسٌ. Allah said you have to look into yourself what you prepared for tomorrow. So that means there is muhasabah daily, every day. What did I do since the morning until now? And I want to avoid that tomorrow. I want to improve it tomorrow. I want to enhance it or increase it tomorrow. So you have your own spiritual mirror, or you have the inside camera. I call it the inside camera. You know, when I teach tajweed to my students, right? I tell them you are not pronouncing the qaf right. Where is the makhraj of the qaf? The end of the tongue. I want you to close your mouth, to close your eyes, and I want you to take a look in the back of your mouth. I want you to all do that exercise now. Close your eyes. I want you to see the end of your mouth, the end of your tongue. Now say aqqa. Do you see your tongue? I want you to see your tongue. Close your eyes. I want you to see your tongue. Aqqa. So now you know how tongue looks like. You are going to start imagining. When you are aware of that while you are reciting, you are going to pronounce the letters right. Most of the people who make mistake, do not have that exercise. So people actually in Houston, whenever they have a problem with one of their students cannot pronounce the kha or anything, they send them here. I'm serious, I'm not joking, wallahi. There is a student who have a problem with the ayn. His teacher, 2 years, he could not get the ayn right. Yani. Inshallah, he's going to come here tomorrow. I'll spend with him a couple of hours, and I promise you, he's going to get out of here saying, ah. Inshallah. Jazakallah khairan. Thank you, Sister Rayesa, for being here.
You're welcome.
Inshallah.